Shebo Jojombo Yantobo Zubizo Rebo Don Shosu Dembo Dewo Shebo Judenchi Deye Kalo Jewo Lano Mebo Lado Menon Dembo Sanje Jande De Bejawo Shajo Dubo Lo Shanse Chodo Josu Jewo Guan Yin Zhu Che Dang Zi Sa Chen De Na Kong Bo Bin Bo Ne Na Ne Je Den De Na Jo Je Song De Zi Ge Bo Che La Xiang Zi Lo Na Da Ge Nga Chu Du Zu Sang Wan Yi Xi Jiang Zu Si Ju Len Bo Ne Chao Bo Ji Den Song Na Lang Ye Wang Gong Bo Chu Ni Je La Xiang Zi Lo Sen Jo Den Bo Zhi Mian Da Yue Zhao Sen Du Zhao Wan Je La Xiang Zi Lo Le Zhe Jian Zhao Si Bo Song Man Ji Niang Mian Chen Jian Je La Xiang Zi Lo Wo Bo Tu Jue Che Den Bo Tang Jie Chen Bei Den Bo Bo Sa Da Yin Den Jiao Zu Xie De Jian Xie La Xiang Zi Lo Ta Bian De Cha Zhe Wan Ji Ge Yue Nge Song Le Zhu Xin Ji Du Den Dong Chu Jun Bo Xin Jue Chen La Xiang Zi Lo Zhe Ne Zhe Yue La Yang Den La Bo Da La Zhao Du Ne Xin Ge Dong Bo Yin De Den Gen De La Yang Xiang Zi Lo De Bo Jin Yang Men Jia Xin Ge Wan Bi Song Zo Ba Xin Nian Ne Yong Su De De Ne Sang Je Den Bo Yin Ga Ma Zhe Zhe Ma Men Dong Ju Ma Se A Chu Bo Dong Men La Lo Da Jin Da Bu Du Xie Chu Nan De Da Dong Se Nan De Yue Dang Qi Zi Ba Yin Guo Bong Da Ne Jun Zhi Zha De De Ga Dang Na Dang Qie Yue Lo Zhu Yue Si Bi Co Lin Zhou Wa Zhe Wa Yu.
Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, at the great center of the house in a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, Venerable Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the Noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should the son of a lineage train, which is to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the Noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Rozo gyula puji daze yala zhuju yangde song Doda jiru nimu nilu le ju jadu zhuzi jin Ri mi zi dungi nyungu juni junzi ridu nong Dene doji saji dazi yende lizo yase tuye go Jida jida jini jinji dali misi jambi yana di O arabazana di O arabazana di O arabazana di Sede chuju chiro vizeju Dali dimu mimba razene Adan dinju julu dobayi Bobi no do boy de shu bin de ju la ga de chen be go ne je zon de gu zon tu je mu zhu su du su pen zo ge le she ye zhen be gu ta ye zhou ye re wa gong ye song ma le xie xia jie jie zui bie du xia jie zu wo de la su wan de tu jie qian bo de xie du jie chang jiu zi de lo ba da na ru ba bian jiu zhu bie ba da a de xia yang le xin la jie la su wan de yang la tu mie yi nie na zhe de qiu de de yue de dang zha bie bie xie za ge sa lu nie su li ba ya jie shi bie jie la su wan de xiang me yu mie shu jie lu zhu dang da wan zha ba zhi bie ge ju qie sang jie ge jiao ba ba yao zi su sa mo da yue jie la su wan de xie zhu dang bie chou nga a de xia bie me bo zhong de jie ne jiu na jie gu qie song la su ga da la ma na la su wan de gang jie xie de zu jie zong ga ba wo dou zhi bie wang xiu jie za jie dong a de bie da bo ke zhu jie yao se ju ba jie la su wan de jiao su gu de la ma du jie chang gang la gang de xie nian ci zong nian qiu dong de mo ngu zhu su zi bie zhen jie la ma na la su wan de rang jia su ru ge la da ye mi ge san da ba zhi bie zhong e chu zai yue zhi bie da ge se ba yi zhang zi xie nie na la su wan de jie wo ge de yang da la ma dang zhe mi zhi zhi bie la long xue jian sa dang lang jue yin de rao zuo nian luo jie chang jie gu nian dou shu san jie zhi dang zu jie jiu na la xiang jiu ba du da nian jiu zu jie da ge zhi 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 bie zu na jie zhou la bie xie sang jie zhu bo shu san jie zhi dang xiang jiu ba du da nian jiu zu jie da ge zhi 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 bie zu na jie zhou la bie xie sang jie zhu bo shu san jie zhi dang zu jiao na la xiang jiu ba du da nian jiu zu jie da ge zhi 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 bie zu na jie zhou la bie xie sang jie zhu bo shu ai ta ga zu to ma kin lo jue de ro da cha chen so ji ma so ji ni ran ni la chuo ji ye ba ji ro.
As usual, we will begin with cultivating appropriate motivation to receive the teachings of the Dharma.
당가 수쇼이 시만 거지. 아니 랑겐 된지 나가 되냐라. 아니 덤바 투비 안 볼라 랑레 집에 라마나 주고 되지. 진되게 나가라 사나다.
So here, to shape one's motivations, one begins with visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in front of oneself, surrounded by all those lineage gurus of Lam Rim Chenmo.
라니 제 아니 랑게 타고 되네. 전쟁이 방마집에 선전나지네. 지 되는 수변 라마를 대두지 시진 봐. 대체 되는 게 제게 세라고지. 제대는 되는 미바티제.
Then in their presence, you yourself being in their presence, surrounded by all sentient beings. Just as you have faith in devotion to the Buddhas and the lineage gurus, as all sentient beings have a similar motivations of having faith in devotions to the Buddhas and the lineage gurus. So with this, let's take a 3 minutes of meditation. So with these motivations, we're receiving the teachings of great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is also known as the lamp of three worlds, the illuminating lamp of three worlds.
아니 된리게 내가 저강 체내제에 네 정도 통마 아니 다자기 때 버셔제 토고 아니 다자기 때 버셔제 토바세나야 아니 다당가 저거서 보고 체내제인데 이게 현지 전부 공부할 때네 아니 준비 현지 전부 탐에도 배배니 집에 담바지 그러와 아니 송샤죠지 통마.
So the teachings of Lam Rim Chenmo, the source of teachings of this Lam Rim is by Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni is the one who actually begun to give this teachings of Lam Rim Chenmo, who perfected his practice of compassion. As we are on the subject of compassions, someone who have perfected and developed compassion and extending compassion towards all beings equally is taught this particular the text, which is the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment.
난리 리그니 반은 저 세미집을 들어 주제 투지 공연 됐는데 이제 전부 탐해대 베베 예 저는 집부터 한번 세던데 봐 차와로.
So Buddha who have gained this state of enlightenment is said to be the valid teacher or the valid beings. It's established that in order to not only just by believing Buddha being a valid being, but it is established by logical reasonings or the logical inquiry. If you look at the second chapter of the Pramanapratika, epistemology, where in the beginning of the second chapter of the Pramanapratika, where it established Buddha, who is Buddha being established, Buddha being a valid teacher of the valid beings.
내가 저 랑게 전제 사이라면 봐도니 강신 비집에 담아나 아니 주제 투지 공연 됐어야겠니 이제 준비 네 랑가는 배신 봐 아니 같이 다시 봐 되지로.
So this is all of those great masters, the authentic masters, who have developed great compassion and perfected the practice of compassion and gained the spiritual realizations.
전에 되게 내가 정말 저와 전에 송샤연 전에 너무 시기지 죄지로.
So this the authentic teaching is given by those beings who have perfected their compassion, and out of their compassion, and the teachings are given to their disciples.
카투시와는 로아 가사 산슈 란치 림바이 이로미 조세네스시에서 저런 거 써와라. 된트기지 나제 댕에지나 이로도 메토기 수여에서는 아주 늦으셔야 돼.
Therefore, the teachings of the Lam Rim, it is stated by the great beings in the past. If the individual who is intelligent enough, if the individual is intelligent enough, will not how that individual will not marvel the teachings of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which actually teaches the three, the essence of the three scopes. So it is worthwhile for us to take a delight in receiving such teachings.
예전에 다나가서 거기 봐봐 칭에 달에 영의 정원에 나야 결론제는 넘바타바지 제거에 빼개치 뭐 인사로 고좀 자치 자와인.
Since not only the texts, the teachings that we are receiving is precious, in order to make this teaching precious for us, right from the beginning, it is important for us to listen to the teachings, and also the teacher who is actually propounding these teachings must be taught on the basis of cultivating appropriate motivations. Or the part of receivers also need to cultivate appropriate motivations to receive the teachings, to make this teaching precious to oneself. So with these explanations, the first three outlines are explained.
다섯째 집안 로샹이다.
So then
다섯째
I'll go
집안에
from the fourth.
가서 담방거 절로만 쳇다트이 림바지 텔라니치 니디 자이 뒤중아송 가디에네 텐스 제거에다 랑저자와 신이 템비스다 때네 로치다샹이 림바니로 왔습니다.
So the one of the important outlines, which is the fourth outline, which is the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. With this, there are again, it has two parts. First, how to rely on the authentic teachers, and which is the root of one's spiritual path. And having relied upon the teachers, how one can train one's mind.
때네 로치다샹이 림바기 사제니 보텔에 슈지 고아테스 랭에네 슈지레 Di ten la nimbo limbi shi gyo nimbo che tan limbi tsu se di sache ngone kwa chi lenge yin so na lega chi gyo jo ro chi cha go sache ko.
So here it is the very important part of this, outlines is deni lo chi der jang be tsu, which means and how to train one's mind, having relied upon the spiritual teacher. So that's a really very very telling.
당은 로상이다. 다치 아니 데이 가사 데이 때는 니볼린 비슈고 다 니보 제단린 비스니 다 도모지자 다 니보 제단린 비스들 아니래 junchi na jala nge ba che ba da nimbo len se ngo re ta tombo ri sa ta nimbo len se ngo de la song re jibe chung da thmo ya la je re ma nya se len se jibe ren da thmo ya nya se jibe chen bi la je re ma nya se len se che ta tombo ni de ri sa ta jibe chen bi la je re ma nya se len se la song re an te chen la jibe go se je khona ten ba se de che ta jibe se se je ne sho ba la lo se se che de ji sa che song de la go se de ba sai sa che insan jibe chen bi.
So here we're on the great the stages of the path for the person of great capacities. This is explained under the three major sections, three major outlines, in other words, showing that that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana, how to develop the spirit of enlightenment, and how to learn the Bodhisattva state after developing the spirit of enlightenment.
당한로와 더 센데 제다 집에 틀려 니래 말에 송이 센데 제다 집에 틀려 송래 조강라 때네 제지 제신사 조강라 때네 제지 생장의 림바지 아니 초가존시 가서 생집이 체 초가존시 이래셔 아니 단 동보들이서 단이바들 생장비 림바들 니래 다제냐지고는 상주 조제는 집에 상가 마시 전쟁고는 상주 생전세당 아니 제세 쇼알라 비쇼는 선비 다제냐지고는 상주 생전세 니체 다 동보 상주의 생전세 대란양 대래 니래 림바게바 렌제등에 자와당 아니 림바장 응어리 다 동보를 니래 니제 자와된바당 아니 진대신 아니 대진에서 된바스 다 마시 다 전쟁명 다성한 사실 상주의 생장세를 니제고네 마시 전쟁고는 상주 생장세 가도 되려래서라다 사제잖아.
So as we all are familiar with the two different ways of practicing this development of bodhicitta. One is equalizing and exchanging self with others, the instructions of the exchanging self with others, and then the second one is the gradual, development of bodhicitta, which is 7 cause and effects. So we are on the chapter of how to develop bodhicitta on a gradual manner.
당가 좀 진대명아 된세데 도마 선제당지랑이 많이 바시바치 아니 진템바치 진소바치 아니 샹바치 로아 다 이용게 샹바스 이제 도모되지잖아.
So with regard to this practice of developing bodhicitta based on sevenfold cause and effect, which begins, so it's here the sevenfold cause and effect begins from recognition of all sentient beings as one's mother and remembering their kindness, and then repaying their kindness, intention of repaying their kindness, which will then be followed by the development of heartwarming love. Those are the 4 steps.
다 동보지보데 니지쳔비 주레스 니지쳔모랑질레제 주레스.
So those 4 practices are said to be the primary cause for development of great compassion.
당가바 하상당 상주이 세니보데 니지쳔비 제버레스.
So then the resolute intention and the development of bodhicitta is said to be the effect or the result of great compassion.
데 코노게 론마 방지지 알아. 론의 방지지. 냥내 투는 마투나 양 용돈들 레상인데지 론의 방지지다.
So it is good to, remember those steps, in a proper sequence. It's also, beneficial or helpful for when one is engaging in the practice of development of bodhicitta.
땅가서 모자기 상추세 자첨벌이 비다리 다 대마도 그거 말세데 땅가서 강가시 시엔데 되로 다들 비다버더니 나는 가서 소수지를 유해친지나 가르치는 간르치는 연구를 해서 just 좋아도 가보러.
So, we all know that bodhicitta is something that is so precious and something that is a primary cause for attainment of enlightenment. So, if this is the case, then we should ask a question to ourselves: how do we then achieve, and how do we then develop such a precious mind, such a awakening mind?
그 단대기 반에도보다 녀반로지. 렌제데 녀바자 와서는 저 사체 코너지는 장셔로. 렌제데 녀바자. 아니 로장스 송요.
So this is how, we must embark upon the journey of developing bodhicitta by following sequentially in a proper order of those meditations.
다들 로장스 응어데 원 되야지. 아니 가서 나서 동보지보데 니지 준비 주인스 인데시데 쇼쇼진 로사리. 다 라산데 니지님보다 샤주생 주인 저비인스 거는 만들어라.
So we have gone through those four orders of recognition of all sentient beings, remembering their kindness, repaying their kindness, and development of heartwarming love as a cause of developing compassion. And now we are on the particular chapter of developing compassion, great compassion, and how this resolute intention in the bodhicitta is considered to be a result of development of compassion.
된게 소소게 노동 휴는 코론도고 제일 가린 연구에 수수지 시고야나 소소 마데는 게 상주생 강가 인사나 용의 소만하기 방지지 두고로.
So if you make yourself familiar with this, practices, on a proper sequence, then whenever you are ready to practice bodhicitta, whenever you're ready to meditate on bodhicitta, so this order of your meditation, the practice of when you are practicing this manner, this will then arise in your meditations, in a proper order. The proper sequence.
So the duga garsena ngasola lolo pate yo ayin lolo pate segubi tandaro. Dram databan zingoyana dram tabaris la gogoro. So nenga ku inchimiji chegoya chinjireko.
So here all this practice, why we have to cultivate such why we need to go through all this practice is because to overcome, to address our wrong way of thinking, wrong way of looking at other beings, because those are all those the practices are it opposes our wrong way of thinking with regard to other sentient beings. Just like if we are willing to know the sound being impermanent, one should know that sound is not a permanent. If you understand the sound is not a permanent, then what is sound? Then sound is impermanent. So understanding of sound being impermanent nature, first one should negate the sound being permanent. This will enable you to understand sound is impermanent.
내가 두샤 가르스나 생 찬여 줘야 되라. 다른 가서 다니 밤아송라 세면라 린토송 입제네 메시지 산두 로즈 가르쳐거이나 되게 메시지 되더라.
So these practices will allow us to, look at all beings, impartially. In other words, it enables us to develop impartiality, because at this moment, at the present, we have a different way of looking at other beings. In the three other, normally we categorize three beings, one being one's own loved ones, another being enemies, another being neutral. So with regard to those three different beings, we have a different way of looking at, we have a different way of considering them. So therefore, in order to eradicate that, we need to first practice impartiality.
손치게 녀자네 손데 제카게 녀자 받은 잠빌리게 강에 봐도 최대의 로렌토 마냐네 메기 손들어.
All the problematic situation that we have on this world, beginning from our family level to the global, the problematic situation is coming into being due to the different way of looking towards other beings. We have a different consideration of other sentient beings.
tentriki rento che de lo rento mendawa de rani lendu de mendu de yona rento de nyamba de kande che gore se de ngaro so amba de ma tendo.
So then examine yourself. How your way of looking at other beings? What kind of mental attitude that you have with regard to other beings? If you find that you have your mental attitude towards other beings are partial, and then how can I make this partial mental attitude at impartial, or how can I develop the impartiality?
다 진짜 시바제로 제주 뭐버 소리지 시주 뭐버 소리지 레디오 산 샤와이나 샘플 계게 팽고 말어.
So we should not take those teachings as just adding on some kind of knowledge or intellectual knowledge. This should not be taken as just as a intellectual knowledge, but needs to be taken as a practice. It needs to be taken as a development of one's own mind towards betterment.
당연 로그이다. 나 안탄 로그이. 라산다 니지도 저기 게데 간도 이 다라인베. 라산다 센진 제분주 신네. 알았어. 로. 대도 로 렌지 장베 니지 제바 나사. 센진 제된도 산제 톤데 제베 대장제. 주메 대바란 라산 주베 지신샤냥 나 손도 어들.
So let's read, if you have a text, it is in 32, page 32, begins from how wholehearted resolve and the spirit of enlightenment are the effect of compassion. Oh, we're all on the same page, right? Okay, so let me know if you haven't found it. Here it says, once you develop compassion through a gradual training of the mind, you generate the desire to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings. This should be enough. Why is it necessary to have the step of developing wholehearted resolve in between?
냥비 샴바다 니지 셈메바네 니테다랑 상제라 예장 아니 상제랑 예장 신제 탕제라 대와 주바다 동네 세와 랑게 코드셰바네 테 쳔발라 멘발라 메베 니 떡제 라바 라비스 라산지제고 소 손데들 다
So here it says resolve between developing compassion and generating the spirit of enlightenment. This is the question, right? So then the answer to this question is its reply. Although Sharvaka and Pratyeka Buddhas have the immeasurable love and compassion, whereby they think if only beings could have have happiness and be free from suffering, and this non-mind followers do not think, I will take on the responsibility to remove the suffering and to provide the happiness of all living beings. Therefore, you must develop wholehearted resolve that surpasses all other courageous thoughts. So now here the difference is now, although that's both Shervaka and Pratitya Buddhas have the immeasurable love and compassion, but the Bodhisattvas are not just having compassion and love for other beings, but they take this responsibility upon their shoulder to overcome suffering and providing happiness towards all other sentient beings. That's the difference. One has just mere cultivation of compassion and love. Other is not just cultivated the love and compassion within them, but also take a responsibility to serve sentient beings, to alleviate them from suffering and providing happiness. So sometimes we also name both those, compassion, and also the resolute intention is also a compassion of protecting, and then another one is compassion of freeing sufferings. So that those are the, sometimes this resolute intention is also named as a compassion as well. So sometimes we also, in certain texts,
Chenpo yo mare senge yoro, niji chenpo ni rangi lo yo mare senge. Lasa meba tenki bache. Ta niji chenpo da tseme niji nila chepa kares. Tseme niji yo bate, langri chenpo siwa chaso. Siwa songsuwa.
Ta iksha khashi nali ya,
ni rangi lo niji chenpo yo mare senge yoro.
Chenpo yo mare senge wa. Ta iksha khashi nali niji chenpo yoro senge.
Ta yoro sa, ta dino yo ndawlo chama sa, niji chenpo iti paru la lasa shegu jense kares sa zona, niji chenpo
So there are some texts that you may come across, you may encounter certain texts that may say the Shervaka and Pratitya Buddha do not possess great compassion. So now here, according to Lam Rim Chenmo, the Shervaka and Pratitya Buddha has developed immeasurable compassion, in other words. So now we have to make a distinction, what is meant by immeasurable and what is meant by great compassion. So that is, we need to make a distinction between these two. So now the differences is now, it looks like differences is, it is whether that compassion, the development of this particular compassion is, conditioned by the resolute intention. Not just you have a wish to overcome that suffering, but I will take this responsibility upon my own shoulder to elevate that individual, the suffering beings from that suffering nature and free them from the sufferings. So this is the difference here. Great compassion, yeah. Great compassion, yeah.
That tendrige say you the tanda nga so ye nirang jil tendrige ni de tanda yo say de ji ma she tendrige lo jan ni de che go de ma go say de yang dai re ro.
So here again, so here again, one thing that we need to examine ourselves is the compassion, the immeasurable compassion developed by the Shervaka and Pratitya Buddhas. Is this compassion, their development of compassion is developed based on, on development of recognition of all beings as one's mother and repaying their kindness and so on and so forth. So this is, again, we need to keep this in mind to examine whether their compassion is developed through those kind of process or practice or not.
Jidang nyetu seson nyetu le rangje tse togore. Nyetu se na le lang mo re. Tepa chimbe lang dribu da jeba ni gi shin ni yen la tue ne ni yen la ma droba sing to do se la gro. Tepa chimbe lang dribu da jeba. Chima chi yen la teng yin tu re.
So the Sharbaka and the difference between the Sharbaka and Pratityapada here is the Sharbaka is always, their practices is developed through listening to other practitioners and other great practitioners and other teachers through their instructions, and they embark upon the path and perfect the path of Sharbakayana and gain the arhathoods. So then again here we should not look at those Sharbaka and Pratityapada as a lore. They are someone who actually gain intuitive realization of selflessness.
That dancing tsawa de cheba pantu ni jinjin la de tendero. That the country yung tu na. Ngasa cheba chere.
So now here they have actually abandoned self-grasping mind, grasping at self, in other words, grasping at self. But then there is an instinct or the propensity of self-cherishing exists within their continuum. And this, again, we need to examine and investigate ourselves how this could be. Someone who already abandoned grasping at self, and how can there be any possibility of leaving the residues of self-cherishing? So then we should also ask the question, why those the arhats of the Pratityapada and the Sharvakas, although they have completely abandoned the grasping at self-grasping mind, but why they are unable to eliminate it, unable to eliminate this propensity of self-cherishing, and which prevents them from developing bodhicitta. So now here it says, let's read through the text here. It is not enough to think, right? If only all living beings could have happiness and could be free from suffering. You must also wholeheartedly assume the person responsibility of producing this yourself. Consequently, you should distinguish between these ways of thinking. The questions of Sagaramati Sutra or the Sagaramati Pratya Sutra states.
Jidan shamba tseme se so na ni dewa da dhyana se ide shamba ro donghe da dhyana se de niji ro shamba niji de karsa shamba da niji ni ki cheba de ji ki dewa da dhyana nyamba re ji donghe da dhyana nyamba re ro.
So as you are all familiar with difference between the love and compassion, here the love is defined as a wishing happiness upon sentient beings, and compassion is wishing freeing suffering from the sentient beings. So those are the differences between love and compassion. So these two practice, has no proper sequence. It can be either one. Can be developed earlier, and there's no such certain, sequence that you have to develop, love first and compassion next, or compassion first and love next. So there's no certain sequence to it.
Tombo Sumbote, Ningala Govache, and Jipada Naba Nimbote, and Jimmy Jirin, the Chegubi Chapa Mayasare, Tanyaso, Jundekesi Jedo.
That's what Tombo Sumbote.
Tombo Sumbote, Ningala, Niachen the Govache. And Jipan Abanin, the Renchen the Chegubi, Napa, Tenemendu, Cheba Yosare.
That's all. So the first three practices that we talked about earlier, the 7 cause and effect. So the first 3 has a proper sequence, but then 4th and 5th and 6th and 4th and 5th has it's a questionable. It shouldn't be any sequence.
Tangasogi lot jin majangri the lo jangna de yangsen shu den le ge sarda. Mun ton yangsen shu den lo jange ji gang jange den na. Yangsen shu den le du sen nga so login do da.
So there are certain experienced practitioners are sharing their experiences. If we really seriously engage in those meditation and train our mind, it says you gain certain experience that is unexplainable. In other words, like something that is something that cannot be expressed by through word. So if we really engage ourselves in this practice, there is a possibility that you may develop such experience that cannot be expressed through word.
Love my choices, say jamba sonji, Danan sonji, jamba sonji, le de best shoe you do send long into Yanse Shu Yasarang and Ganjang. He Cheva Majana Chedam Ranja and Dening it, Sonos Kansas show you understood.
So therefore, a couple of those experienced practitioners would mention at one time, saying that when you really engage in those practices, and when you really develop those qualities, the mental qualities, the attitudes in your mind, and then you feel that you have a very strong feeling of that, experiencing it, but then it is really hard to express it, and it's really hard to explain to others. So this is the kind of the mental training that we may be able to develop.
So la parang de chitone, ma son Cuban ma ten choice sonji, Samba Shu im gangage, Nolola Karichen jet to a sonji, le de sonda.
So they're saying that, you're able to control your entire mind. You're able to, become yourself as a master of one's own mind. So you can control your mind and keep your mind and you can command your mind so that your mind is not, producing any counterproductive actions and so forth. So this is I was shared by the great, the experienced practitioners.
Tangasoki Hipa de Tendri Shamba the Semeni Yamanta Sune Romotobana Yetuaina. Tenin the Pichi Devat Sobachetumare. Chinot.
So therefore, if we really take seriously and practice those immeasurable love and immeasurable compassions, when you get onto the point where you're actually perfecting those practices, then the feeling of happiness or the positive feelings that you have is something that is beyond your conception, something that cannot be explained, something that cannot be expressed. So this is how, the experienced meditators have shared with me.
Tona mitimba mebashi yola hachi. Chiwo tenyang shiban jowe gashibe me zangyin dangdun hongwan jodo. Tene chiwo teyi maang nyenji, chiwo te me zangyin dangdun hongwan de tone jang ngochenbu deshin sa, nyange sheba mengan dende, me zangyin dangde shu ne chiwo den donba ne meje dochi. Tene chiwo teyi pa sho de songde, de bichibu de mezangyin dangde hongwa tone jang rinbe tabi tsuje bichibu den donbi lu seba shede ju zhuwa meba mezangyin dangde baudi bichibu shongwan jodo sa tenpa de chilo de mabudu wonan tanda chinda.
So here now the sutra states Sagarmati Paripracha Sutra, Paripracha Sutra states, suppose the Sagarmati, a householder or a merchant, had only one son, and this son was attractive, beloved, appealing, and pleasing. Suppose that because the son was young and playful, he fell into a pit of filth. When his mother and relatives noticed that he had fallen into it, they cried out, lamented, and grieved, but they did not enter the pit and take him out. When the boy's father arrived and saw that his son had fallen into this pit of filth. However, his only thought was to save him, and without revulsion, jumped into the pit of filth and pulled him out. So here now the example, according to this particular, passage, it looks like that father has a more sense of caring for the son. It's more courageous. More courageous.
Domba miniba nyerang tangchi. Tsumpen tang chinda ne shanchu senpa tang pyoden de jane songde de. Magwa mende lo shansu.
So then he is to make the connection between the meaning and the parts of analogy, right? The pit of filth represents the three realms, and the only child represents living beings, and the mother and the other relatives represents Sherpak and Pratika Buddha, who see beings fell into cyclic existence, grieve and lamented, but are not able to save them. The merchant or the householder represents the bodhisattvas. Hence, so this is pretty clear connection, right, between analogy and the meaning. The sun being sentient, cyclic beings who are in the cyclic existence, and relatives are refers to Sherpak and Pratika Buddhas, and the father being Bodhisattva.
당연히 상상파티 질 와셔. 단다 지바레시. 비치비치바는 면상면 다운도 홍한 데라. Di ma niji chewan drawa shi nirang la yoba song so aji. Tena asa niji la tenen drawa drubi kuchibi lasan cheba shao osa. Teta tiba de chilo da na shao osa. Nimegi sansa pato lo shao ngani.
So them and then the merchants or householders represent the bodhisattvas. Hence this is saying in that Sharbak and Pratyeka Buddha have the compassion which is like that of the mother for her beloved only son who falls into the pit of filth, and therefore develop a wholehearted resolve that assume the responsibility of liberating all beings based on compassions.
Tetan rawa niji yobate nga so pechi chozo pesha te tseni tase tongdani na long kong zengi na nirang jile niji yobi jino to lodro jansu shibin dole doa kondu san do.
So now sometime if the individual who really believes in the text that says Sharbak and Pratyeka Buddha do not possess this compassion or love, so then this sutra can be the source. You can get a quotation from the sutra and said this you can give this quotation to the person to believe, make he or her believe that Sharbak and Pratyeka does develop compassion and love. So let's take a break here.
당한 단지 데스라스도 돼. 이게 단지 상상로서 그 진법바 인상 넣어서 대신해 주셨다. 그거 차려. 야 대다 샤오도 너. 인질 쿠치비 나선 제바 샤오지. 대다 신제 드비 로제바나 랑게 내가 대답은에 신제 찌게 된 조바 샤와. 미니라지. 대마제 다장바 니제 고반 터장 신제 뉴제 레당 대유대양 타바상 주바 니제 당제 준비 고반 미니베 신제 타예바다 대다게 내거다 타도게 된 통지 조바 수식의 니냐도 삼바나 산제 냐지게 니바 대여바 세네 신제제도 산제 타바샤 타반되바 제도 어스르데
So here now, let's read through the text. Once you intend to liberate all beings, you realize that in your present condition, you cannot fulfill the aim of even a single beings. Moreover, even if you attain the high state of two arhat, Sharbak and Pratyeka Buddha, you will still only be able to fulfill the aim of liberation for merely a few living beings and will be unable to establish them in omniscience. Therefore, if you think you can fulfill all the temporary and the final aims of limitless living beings, you will realize that only a Buddha has this ability. Then you will develop the desire to attain Buddhahood for the sake of these beings.
또아 다다되게 단다 가르된 거잖아. 당가서 이게 마시 텐데 하산에 다 센지게 상주게 센ran지를 용해 간데체는 용거래 세 되게 된다고데 튀로도 되죠도.
So this is how it actually summarized in what manner that we can really develop bodhicitta. What is the skillful means and methods for developing bodhicitta within oneself?
더 신제던지 동네던 저와지를 하는게 나랑랑게 제거에나 오늘 처럼이 간데 제거에 배서 나와이나 다다지 제거로 간데체나 가서래 로 자기 된 거로 로 전줄로도 전부 레사로.
So now if one is determined to work for the welfare of entire sentient beings. And now, just by wish to work for the welfare of other entire sentient being is not sufficient. So we need to develop such a intention, or intention that enables one to take a responsibility of overcoming the suffering of all other sentient beings, working for the welfare of other sentient beings. And how can we develop such an intention?
단다 라니를 따와이나 젠다기 템파 유슈다 라니기 템 추제탄 주비 니바 아야사나 니바 메와.
At the present, let alone that we will be able to work for the welfare of other sentient beings. One is unable to even to fulfill one's own wish. We do not have ability of fulfilling one's own wish at this moment.
다슬은 두세는 파칼로는 따윤데 아니 나속에 니라다 잠바 생에 요래. 다살레네 비 샹주 semba 요래. 아니 조베 상제 요래. 스케시고라.
So then who has such a ability? Then you look at the other beings, the great beings, such as Shervaka, Buddhas, Pratikas, and Shervaka Arhats, and Arhats of Pratika Buddha and Pratika and Shervaka, and the Bodhisattvas on the pure state of Bodhisattvas, and the Buddhas possess those qualities, abilities.
디노로라 라니 란데 타마신바 젠데 주투 젠라 로보체 토세 에데 타니 장조요 마로와 야나 란데 냥데 지체데 진제 데니 바치 게게 탕고 마레 다 란데 타신바치 마종 바도 선제 타지 된주투 민도 인자네 녜바도 란데 타토바치 제고고도 세데로.
So now here what it really emphasizes is here it emphasizes that without fulfilling the purpose of one's own self, certainly it's not possible to fulfill the wish, purpose of other beings. Thus, one first put an effort to fulfill the purpose of one's own self. So then, in what manner to fulfill one's own purpose? What is meant by the fulfilling one's own purpose? What is the purpose of one's own self?
오늘 딘트기 오늘 녜 타신에 선제 타신 거사데 조베 상제생인데 마도 네 라제니가 이된다데 타신 두고민도 데 타신 벌로 돈보라니 상제 데네 선제 타주 조베 상제를 마고 봐도 선제 타지 된시에 민도 세는 타제 용디 다 상주 세마도 저서메 바지 데네 통용.
So then here the question is that to fulfill one's own purpose is to gain state of enlightenment as a practitioner, and that is the objective of that is the skillful means of fulfilling one's own purpose. So now, in order to achieve state of enlightenment, the enlightenment will not happen. It will not take place until and unless you develop bodhicitta and perfect the development of one's bodhicitta within one's continuum.
다 젠텐 제거래 세디 젠텐 가르레스는 개체치 희고로 소이로와.
So then here, having gained state of enlightenment, one is then possess those ability of fulfilling the aims or fulfilling the purpose of other beings. Have a ability to working for the welfare of other sentient beings. So now here, what is the welfare of other beings? One need to identify what is the welfare, what are those welfare of other beings that we are talking about.
다 젠데네 젠지nyanyandeyla setela soaro. 젠데스네 젠 조베 상제 고본 거비. 젠지지 상제지 고본데레 소aro.
So what is meant by the welfare of others? The welfare of others here really referring to that nirvana of other beings. In other words, establishing other sentient beings to the state of non-abiding nirvana. That is the purpose or the welfare of other beings. This is when speaking about the bodhisattvas working for the welfare of other sentient beings, their welfare of others here referring to the establishment of the non-abiding nirvana within the sentient beings, within the continuum of sentient beings.
또 가서 가르 과래 거서는 예 가서게 단다지 예로 로보제 제지 제세디 지도고 당서 세대디 지고로 상는 코너마도 델레기 세대 개가 매와 되는지 메디 상제 기마 제비 손지요래.
So here now, normally when we speak about working for the welfare of other sentient beings, we merely think about, providing food, shelter, clothing, and so forth. So we are unable to go beyond that. We are unable to, have a perspective that can go beyond, material help. That is we normally think about when we speak about working for the welfare of other sentient beings.
딱 가르지 타고에 말이 가르지 강에 되고 그래서나 미시비 강에 되고 알아. 미시비 온이 강에 되고 알아.
So this is why, because we are not knowing how can we really fulfill the purpose of other sentient beings. We are unable to, go through the proper process of fulfilling the process of fulfilling the purpose of other sentient beings.
딱 미시비데 간데세 그래서나 아니 최대는세 그러러.
So how can we, dispel this not knowing or unknowing or the ignorance that prevents us from what is need to, fulfill the purpose of other sentient beings? This can be dispelled by receiving the teachings of the Dharma, by studying the Dharma.
딱 최대는 그래서디 라상 동반이 된셔야지도 상추선 된셔야지 많이 봐. 아니 선제 강라 강대비 삼바 제타와젠데 신에 제타와젠데 대통령에 달라 아니 지신지시 소원이 세더라.
So then now here by teaching Dharma or studying Dharma or learning Dharma, one can dispel one's ignorance. Now when speaking about teaching Dharma and learning Dharma or studying Dharma, that doesn't necessarily be the teachings on emptiness or teachings on bodhicitta. And these teachings must be based on the dispositions and the inclination of the individuals. Based on their dispositions, one should propound the Dharma in accordance with their mental dispositions and spiritual inclinations.
딱 나론 속에 로세라고 지 보면 들으면도 선제인 제바 야쇼리 때 당원sel로이나 소인 제바데 당고거든. 소인은 최소한 되로와. 딱 가서 때 당고 말이 주바대에서나 한지에 손이지 당셔셔그러.
So if we were to ask that which activities of the Buddha's activities is the sublime among all the activities, and we're supposed to choose the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma that's taught by the Buddha is the supreme activity among all the activities of the Buddha. However, if we were to ask this, we choose to something else. We don't think about the Buddha's speech as a supreme activities of the Buddha's among the Buddha's activities, but we would choose something else most of the time. We think about having the vision of the Buddhas or some kind of miracle powers that is performed by the Buddhas and so forth, and those are considered to be at the supreme activities of the Buddha, not choosing the Buddha's speech as the supreme activities of the Buddha. Therefore, Lama Tsongkapa stated in his prayers to dependent originations that among all the activities of the Buddha, the speech activities of the Buddha is said to be the supreme.
가르치르사나 나소기 미시비 미바데 투상공소 렌치제네 로 미바데 서고인도 동보 투비시라 되제고래 투비시라 제발로 투네 제네마도.
So why this Lama Tsongkapa stated that is because in order to dispel our ignorance, the darkness of our ignorance, one must first, listen to the Dharma and contemplate on the meanings of the Dharma and meditate. It is through the by listening and contemplating and meditating will dispel the darkness of ignorance.
쇼 변화로 추기 고아지 질러는 지질랑지 체시 발생의 차용으로 쇼 간했다서나야 뒤지 델레라와지 매바서지 고투그래로 송긴 제발레 젠케케 펜마동이지.
If you really examine very carefully, you will really see the teachings, the speech, the Buddha's speech, as a supreme among all the activities of the Buddha.
가르사는 매대 라니기 돈을 라니 내자তে 세고아 인자는 매 돈에도 몇십이 내대 세야 들어와.
Just like a medicine that you take a medicine that dispels, which actually alleviates your sickness, which alleviate your sickness. In the same manner, by teaching the speech of the Buddha Dhamma, the Dhamma that is given to us needs to be taken by the followers to, overcome this darkness of ignorance.
되지. 다 된대지. 다 되게 알레 코로로장 승고지 다른 바 올래도. 님바 좀 봐줘. 세더와. 렌젠데 빠져와다 좀 봐줘. 세더다. 방아되면 로이다. 좀 봐줘.
Now we are on the chapter, it's on the chapter 3, which is the 7 cause and effect personal instructions. That it starts from the gradual training.
야. 다 좀 봐줘. 거라 송체. 젠데 된이 로장바당 想去等等你落讲吧，上边这不三节吧我送哦送的。
So here that has the gradual training has 3 sections, right? Training the mind to be intent on the others welfare. Second is training the mind to be intent on enlightenment, and third, identifying the spirit of enlightenment, the fruit of the training.
되지. 순번이다. 집인这不三节吧我送的想出山了，没说给08年的想出山是哪个的？08年的想出山，是吧？
So here, the identifying the spirit of enlightenment, the fruit of the training. So identifying the spirit of enlightenment, which is identifying the bodhicitta. Okay. So what is how do we identify bodhicitta? Is bodhicitta is defined as a consist of 2 aspirations: aspiration to attain enlightenment and aspiration to working for the welfare of other sentient beings.
다 동부 현대 되니지 로세데 현대 되니지 덴바데 랑딜마 제바 상추 생요 말이 상추 생데 덴바니 된 거로 왔을라다.
So without having a strong intention or genuine intention of working for the welfare of other sentient beings, it is not possible for individual to gain bodhicitta. So therefore, first, working for the welfare of other genuine intention of the working for the welfare of other sentient being must be generated.
Welfare
of others, as we talked about earlier, referring to the others here, referring to the nirvana that is to be accomplished by the other beings. And in other words, the non-abiding nirvana, state of enlightenment that is to be accomplished by the other beings. So this is how we should train ourselves. What is when speaking about the bodhicitta consists of 2 aspirations: aspiration to working for the welfare of other sentient beings, aspiration to gain state of enlightenment. We have to identify what is meant by the welfare of others. One need to identify what is welfare of others. So this is, this need to be identified.
This is called the Belendebor, Benedict.
We are unable to perfect our working for the welfare of other sentient beings until and unless you generate a genuine bodhicitta, that intention or the genuine intention of establishing entire sentient beings to the state of enlightenment.
대연지 상제시디 타르모 개체만 제어제 신체되게 나섭다이 말어 다니게로는 로 뉴디 당 시디니 전에 상제지 고포만 잡아도 아니 시디데 밤부터 엔전에 나섭다이 말이 상해 말이
Even though one may have gained a spiritual realization, such as the lower levels of arhathood and so forth, but one is not able to actually abandon the two obscurations. Although you may have abandoned the obscuration to liberation, but you still have obscuration to knowledge, what we call, and obscuration to omniscience. Sometimes it is translated. So, it is by attaining enlightenment will only overcome the obscuration to knowledge, obscuration to omniscience.
딘주지 전에 자첨부 제월에 란데 타마시바도 요구 민두 세디시에디 동보 선제 타지게 된데 라니 조베 상지 고바타고 인잔 란데 되니지로
Without achieving such a quality, it is not possible for one to work for the welfare of other sentient beings. One is, if without having such quality, it is not possible for one to actually fulfill the purpose of other sentient beings.
단대가 솔로 장 계시시오라 로데 장소는들이 연구를 세우라
So this is the process of training our mind. Once you're able to, completed the process of our mind, trainings of our mind, and perfected our mind, and this quality of quality that we talked about earlier will be then accomplished.
제마도가 단타랑 상제고에 상제지 고번 레벨 상동이면 상대적 로 레벨 상동으로
So, just by having a strong intention of gaining state of enlightenment will not, enables one to gain the state of enlightenment overnight.
되지. 다 사지 속에 고아디디 된다. 한지 응어서 동보라니체 로데 제비 지두바 당사 로데 제바 응어서 동보라니체.
So here, now training the mind to be intent on the other's welfare has two parts. The establishing the basis of developing this attitude first, and the second, the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare.
다진데 되니 로장을 니도 연조 동보라 니제 연조 로데 제비 지두바라 니제 니 senjen senyamba drupa tang senjen yi dong yi namba jendo drupa wo song de der.
Then establishing the basis for developing the attitude has two parts, that's all. The first, achieving impartiality towards living beings. And the second, having affection for all beings.
되지. 다 동보 당간 로샤인다. 그 고대도 사자. 이동 놈 drupa 오지. 동보 내에서 마 지부 충전이 고스 셰바 다사 혼로라 수비 렘바나 대양 랑라 장와 샤오사.
So then it says achieving impartiality towards living beings. I previously explained the stages of the preliminary practice and so forth in the context of the persons of the small and medium capacities. So the practice this preliminary practices here as well, and then sustain your meditation.
대장면 되지. 다도아 다 소소기 변에 대리 거스 단다랑지 가서기 매지 소소기 냥내제 연구치 주고에나 동부지 지 고선도 지 된장서대 첨부되는 초진세대보다 지 양라되면 멘데다 제바 강로기 지 강저버데 랑도 연비 된다라 초 강자첨부 사토에 사 되네 네 강저 연구 좀 고주고로 되리.
So now here we're on this point that we're on the point of engaging in the actual practice of meditation on bodhicitta. So prior to this practice, prior to undertaking this particular practice, one should engage in the 7 limb practices in order to establish a strong basis upon which one can develop those spiritual realizations. In other words, the bodhicitta.
다 연락 때 보면 내가 잡아 다지고 도선 건데 또 연수 줘봐도 혼조리마도 뭐지마리 뭐지 때 인치미지라니 강자야 돼.
So those are all preliminary practices, the 7 limb practices with mandala offerings and the visualization, the mirrored fields and visualization of deities and so forth are all the preliminary practices. It is not actual meditation practice.
되지. 맞아 람 림 쳔모는 가르타 지금 취해버서는 강조바랑라 다지야.
So according to the Lam Rim Chenmo, it says the practicing Dharma defines as on meditations. In other words, the proper meditation is said to be the practice of Dharma.
추 세디 쥐어봐서 쥐어봐서나 되어만이봐 쥐어봐 쥐어봐대 셴네 쥐어봐 셴네 쥐어봐대 강전네 쥐어봐 대만도 로사 진네 메레 다진 가서 소사 대장이 몽로체 아니 대내 몽로체디 뭐지걸라 삼바 흐스 파 아니 삼바 텐데올라지 야포지 레비걸라 아니 존예는 가서 센지 세찬올라 아니 강라 강자에디 미바데 차용디 코틴제야본 장이고.
So those preliminary practices that we talked about earlier are the favorable condition for development of one's actual practice of meditation. So it favors us from developing our actual meditation practice. So therefore the meditation alone is the real Dharma practice. Dharma, which is the original term, the Sanskrit term, is translated in Tibetan che, which means to transform, which means to modify. What is meant by transform or modify is the modification of one's, destructive thoughts, and make, as a result of this practicing Dharma, one should cultivate constructive thoughts by dispelling the destructive thoughts. And this can only be done by understanding. In order to understand Dharma, one needs to meditate. Without meditation, will not be able to understand essence of Dharma.
당가서 동보 강제 연구 주인데 당년 강그래 소소아 당년 강발은 혼자 제거에 당에 단달라 차지로.
So the actual meditations will begins with the meditation on impartiality, and prior to engaging in the practice of impartiality, then we talked about earlier, it's the practice of seven limb practices. Sorry.
당가서 지 빠트코로 다하나는 배전전에 리치 강제전에 지 강정에 있어나 아니 까마 추세 시작했지만 강저 양 강저디 강의제때 야보문 선바다 야보용 보면은 양 양론의 샤세 양 면제비 이자사 늦은 배전제 양 마데 강저네 딱 강가 되기 자체로도 제고.
So if someone who is Lam Rim meditator, or this particular, the practitioner, the real practitioner, in other words, will put effort on the main practice should be taken as a meditation. Meditation should be one's primary practice. So then sometime when you're unable to focus your mind on the meditations, and there might be some kind of hindrances or the obstacles, then you should arise yourself, you should come out from your meditation, meditative equipoise, and do some other practices such as recitations of mantras and prostrations and mandala offerings are again the favorable condition for development of your meditation practice.
아니 대강라 강자 아니 인조 아니 종참모기 단다 베나 마시텐데기 상추선랑지레 제시카토라야 양스 베셨던로 로조체. So
then also one take time to study the Dharma, read the Dharma texts and sutras. If one is engaging in the practice of bodhicitta, one should read those proper sequence of the sevenfold cause and effect.
Dita 가서 가서 시진 상지 말에 아니 비 정글로 정가 버치면 오미 따와랑 한질래 집이 제도 인지선 잠배는 것을 쉬운데 아니 던지 제셔서 아니 라달라마 예매데 전에 가서 야라 되면고는 소사지자 잡아 아니 강잡아 아니 정체몰라 로저 잡아 송한테 인지미지도 손대제는 로는마도 내가 또 단다이 차는 배 라고를 마서 바깥부 강자로 당 나서나 이기다.
So here now, it is, what the Lama Tsongkapa has done. When he had a vision of Manjushri, and Manjushri instructed Lama Tsongkapa that one should engage in the inseparability of meditation and inseparability of deity in one's guru, and then followed by the practice of, engage in the 7 limb practices, meditations, and studying of those the great deities and great sutras and deities, and so with those, Lama Tsongkapa had taken such practices, followed these instructions, and gained high levels of realizations. And for us at this point, we are really, kind of, in other words, that we are really dry right now. So therefore, we need to know how to distinguish between the preliminary practices and actual practices.
Shuri mebala mine mechewa tanya gamba shao song da der.
So here it says, from the outset of establish an even-minded attitude, in other words, eliminating the bias which comes from attachment to some living beings, and bias some living beings, and the hostility to others. Otherwise, any love for compassion you feel will be biased. So you will never feel unbiased love for compassion. So cultivate impartiality.
Tanduinda. Tanya la sa dishe tanya da chwa tanya seme tanya song yo balen dene tamayin la che.
So then he said, there are 3 kinds of impartiality: the equanimity with respect to applications, the feelings of impartiality, and the immeasurable impartiality.
Dansa senchen na la chadang la su bi nyumo meba dubi namba jenshi dansa rani senchen la chadang de chewe senyo ba yin sumba ne den shima wo so do der.
So in these sections, impartiality refers to the last one, and immeasurable impartiality is said to have 2 types. So wishing the living beings were free.
This one. Shima de shima wo so. Then they can be Korean se de jang.
So we'll stop here.
당가서 되나 당가서 단답발 가를 하샤서나 아니 세린 통지 쇼네로 신전을 따당 민지어체 아니 젠제디 슈체를 땅 근데 단답발은 가서 노트 되는 샤사스지로.
So up until now, if you look at ourselves, what is gone wrong with us is that due to our biased attitude towards other beings, other sentient beings, It is because of that, we are unable to achieve what we wish to achieve.
다능에 상주기 생이 좀 신선하리 다 주부 세단 된 버진 로사게 랑가데 문에 셰송 다 된르게 랑가데란 미정보 마토 원로 투어 제네 아니 타예비 성제 통제 랑가데를 티네 조비 성제지 고마타 바지 지장의 샤거이 안테 샤님 번 되는 슈베네 너무 세단 저거는 이제 신절로도서 사네 아니 신로도 홍원이 가자다.
So at this point now, to dedicate, henceforth, as I have understood this, the proper path to a state of enlightenment, I must follow those paths unmistakably for the sake of all other sentient beings, establishing all other sentient beings to the state of enlightenment as soon as possible. So therefore, may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless me to be able to do this.
Sanje shendo min de bewa ye rogun nondo shin lo shubo shu yanda lama dan jime chu ju be la lo shu jin sadan la ju yu de ro zo ne 도주 정계 고본유 도주 구루라나 민레나 건너ян다야미 nindu bele zonye kada yamba kanshi sabate lomi mare gedon rawana nandre jaye ombo dajuji Dema sunbe zera gundo yang jambe yang ju zewe jizone tenbe rinpa gun san lang ju chu nyene zhu yun je na nye shi shu rangi ju jin do be lang ju ne shu zha zewe zhang yue ta ge je 若月月之明报谁先呢？要月登报有人真就急，登报人间出给马家报，悄悄娘报就别说的呢，你就全部一让就报也，偏的对对是我写不说。 世间教育民众真来来，来主相处浪就人别讲，谈的浪就一浪别的心，有人真就急，两把人情交给马家。 me dan me me kun se ro kun do ja ye nga ba ye la dan je wa ma ju je kan se te ba cho la je 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 ci jin du la zun ba de yue ze tu de na ju da du zhu xi jin 这些将此树根敲就结，拉面果在绕点间，那个城里树就结巴当，老上点别这面啥松结，这月面色大都年就结。 绕月过月心刚说，平当的我忙里永远的，现在生活的人叫作业， 小别身体保度天主节。报愿知道前报当，更多上报天阳天见天，天道根据就是道路修，愿望的道当机绕度我，律送西边家我当解决，我光乐就度我不的。大心给予萨瓦的根将，松波学习绕度我。